I jolted awake to the sound of pure pandemonium. At first, I thought it was a dream, but no, there it was, a deafening bang. Bang, bang, hammering on my front door, so forceful I could have sworn the hinges shook. My heart leapt into my throat. Who in their right mind would be pounding on my door at? What time was it? I fumbled for my phone. 5 in the morning. My sleep-fogged brain scrambled for an explanation, an emergency, a fire, maybe a bear on the loose. But as I stumbled out of bed and yanked the door open, I was greeted not by chaos, but by my least favorite new neighbor, Linda, standing on my porch in a garish paisley bathrobe. Her hair was a wild mess, a chipped coffee mug dangled from one hand, and her other fist hovered midair, poised to strike again. She looked furious. "You think this is funny?" she screeched, her voice so sharp I'd bet dogs 3 counties over perked up. I blinked, my brain still struggling to catch up after being ripped from sleep. "What?" I croaked, my voice barely functioning. Linda jabbed a trembling finger past me, toward my yard, her eyes blazing. The noise, the racket, the absolute torture I endure every morning because of you and your ridiculous farm nonsense. Still half asleep, I stepped back, trying to process the absurdity of her words. Farm nonsense? Did she forget where she'd moved to? I took a deep breath, hoping oxygen might spark some clarity. "Linda," I said slowly, rubbing my face. "You do realize you moved next to a farm, right?" Her face twisted like I'd just flung a dead fish at her. "That doesn't mean I have to put up with it," she snapped. "I bought this house for peace and quiet, and instead, I wake up every single day to," she flailed her arms dramatically, "that monstrous thing screaming its head off at an ungodly hour." And just like that, it clicked. I didn't even need to look to know what she meant. Somewhere behind me, my rooster, Sergeant Peck, the toughest, loudest bird I'd ever owned, was likely perched on his favorite post, belting out his sunrise anthem with the gusto of a heavy metal frontman. I sighed, my patience already wearing thin. "Linda," I said, "roosters crow. That's what they do." "Well, make it stop," she shrieked, stomping her slippered foot on my porch like a toddler mid-tantrum. "It's ruining my sleep. I get migraines. I have an important lifestyle that demands rest, and I won't tolerate this savage howling every morning." I stared at her. "Savage howling?" "Yes," she hissed, reading my expression. "That wretched creature is a menace to society. There are laws about this, you know." That made me pause. Laws about farm noises in the middle of nowhere? That was like moving next to a highway and suing over car engines. I sighed again, sharper this time. "Linda, I've had this farm for years. My family's had it even longer. That rooster, and all my animals, were here way before you showed up." She crossed her arms, a smug grin curling her lips as if she'd been waiting for me to say that. "Well, guess what? I checked with the county, and there are noise ordinances." My patience, already frayed, snapped. "Are you seriously telling me you went out of your way to complain to the county about a rooster?" Her smirk widened. "Oh, not just the rooster," she said, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "The tractors, the cows, the occasional barking dog. I filed a formal complaint." I had to take a second to process that. This grown woman was standing on my porch at 5 a.m., admitting she'd lodged a complaint about farm sounds in a farming community. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Linda," I said, forcing calm, "this is the countryside. Farms make noise. That's how it works." "I don't care," she barked. "You can't just wake up and do whatever you want like some feral beast. Some of us have real responsibilities." I gave her a long, hard look. "Linda, you work from home. You sell essential oils on Instagram." That was the breaking point. Her face contorted with rage. "That's it," she screamed. "If you won't fix this, I'll make sure someone does. I'll start a petition. I'll get the whole town involved." Right on cue, Sergeant Peck unleashed the loudest, most triumphant crow I'd ever heard, like the universe itself had timed the punchline. Linda let out a guttural shriek, spun on her heel, and stormed off my porch, muttering like a lunatic. I watched her go, shaking my head in disbelief. Had I really just woken up to a full-on neighbor war over a rooster? As I shut the door and leaned against it, a slow grin spread across my face. "All right, Linda, you want to fight? You want to wage war on farm noises? Game on." Later, sitting at my kitchen table with a coffee in hand, I replayed the morning's insanity. Linda had declared war on farm sounds, and I knew she meant business. She'd already called the county and filed complaints. She wasn't going to quit. I saw two paths forward. I could tiptoe around her fragile nerves forever, or I could push back in the most fitting way possible. That's when inspiration struck. Sergeant Peck was the heart of Linda's grievances, this savage menace, ruining her suburban countryside fantasy. If she thought his crows were unbearable now, she was in for a treat. I had a plan, and it was glorious. First, I needed to amplify Sergeant Peck's presence. Until now, he'd roamed free, picking his own spots to crow. But for this to work, I had to get strategic. I relocated his favorite perch to a new spot, right near Linda's bedroom window. Not on her property, of course, just close enough for every crow to hit her with full force. I even built a sturdy new roost, angled so his morning serenades would bounce off her walls and straight into her sleep-deprived soul. Next, a little rooster TLC. A well-fed bird is a loud bird, so I tweaked Sergeant Peck's diet, loading him up with protein-rich feed to fuel the most epic, relentless crows imaginable. If Linda thought she'd suffered before, she hadn't seen anything yet. The first morning of my plan was pure gold. I set my alarm for 3:55 a.m., eager to witness the show. Right on schedule. At 4 o'clock sharp, Sergeant Peck unleashed a crow so piercing and majestic it could have woken a coma patient. I chuckled from my porch as Linda's bedroom light flicked on like a distress signal. Seconds later, her door flew open, and out she charged, bathrobe flapping, looking like she'd survived a tornado. "Are you kidding me?" she screamed into the dark, her voice raw with exhaustion and fury. "This is harassment. This is illegal. This is—" Another crow cut her off mid-rant. She let out a strangled yelp, threw her hands up, and screeched, "I'll call the police. I'll call the governor. I'll call the president if I have to." I sipped my coffee, leaning casually against the railing. "Good morning, Linda. You're up early." She whirled on me, eyes wild. You did this on purpose." I raised an eyebrow. "Did what? Let my rooster do his natural farm duties? Can't fight nature, Linda." She stomped so hard I thought her slipper might fly off. "This is war," she hissed, jabbing a finger at me before storming back inside. The next few days were a masterpiece. Every morning, Sergeant Peck greeted the dawn with the dedication of a rock star, and every morning, Linda unraveled a little more. She tried noise-canceling headphones. Useless, judging by her bloodshot eyes and frazzled hair the next day. Then she blasted white noise from her bedroom, which backfired since she apparently hated that sound too. By day 3, she snapped. She charged outside with a bucket of water and hurled it at Sergeant Peck. She had decent aim. The splash hit his perch, but that bird, a tactical genius, dodged with grace and fired back with the longest, loudest crow of his career. Linda stood there, drenched and defeated, pointing at me. "You," she seethed, "are the worst neighbor in history." I grinned. "And you're the one who moved next to a farm." She stormed off, but I knew the battle wasn't over. She was too stubborn to quit. The next morning, Linda called animal control. An officer showed up at my gate, looking half sorry, half dead on his feet. "Sir," he said, flipping through his notes, "we got a noise complaint about a rooster." I crossed my arms. "You mean my farm animal, on my farm, in the countryside?" He sighed. "Yeah, that one." I glanced at Linda's house, where she peeked through her curtains like a paranoid sleuth. "So," I continued, "what's the law on roosters crowing?" He rubbed his temples. "As long as you're within agricultural zoning laws, you're fine." "Perfect," I said, nodding. Linda must have sensed her plan failing because she burst out, waving her arms like a traffic cop. "Are you seriously not going to do anything?" she screeched. The officer sighed again, clearly regretting his life choices. "Ma'am, he's within his legal rights." Her face turned beet red. "Well, I demand a law change." He blinked. "That's not how laws work." I bit my cheek to keep from laughing as Linda let out a feral scream and stormed back inside. The officer left, and I leaned on my porch, watching the sunrise with smug satisfaction. Sergeant Peck puffed out his chest, victorious. But Linda wasn't done. I could feel it. And that made it all the more entertaining. The war with Linda escalated beyond reason. She was now obsessed, plotting my downfall with every breath. But if she thought I'd roll over, she'd misjudged me badly. After animal control flopped, Linda went quiet, too quiet. That kind of silence from her spelled trouble. I found out why when I checked my mailbox and pulled out a letter labeled Homeowners Association Violation Notice in bold caps. I blinked. I didn't live in an HOA. My farm predated the concept here. Yet there it was, threatening fines for excessive noise. The document was laughable, mismatched fonts, uneven spacing, and a signature that was clearly Linda's handwriting with a shaky attempt at disguise. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped it. She'd faked an HOA notice. Curious, I dug deeper. County records confirmed no HOA existed, but Linda had gone door to door, trying to rally neighbors into her imaginary organization with promises of peaceful living if they signed her petition against my farm. No one bit. Most found her hilarious. Old man Carter, a 70-year resident, said he'd laughed in her face and slammed the door. When her fake HOA failed, Linda got pettier. She called the county again, this time claiming my farm violated health codes. A tired-looking inspector showed up, clipboard in hand. Sorry about this, he sighed. Complained about sanitation, animal maintenance, environmental hazards. I raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, Linda? He gave a knowing look, but didn't confirm. I showed him around. Pristine barns, clean water, healthy animals. After 30 minutes, he closed his clipboard. Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. I smiled. No violations? None, he said. Just then, Linda strutted over from her driveway, arms crossed. Well, she demanded. Did you cite him? The inspector stared at her. Ma'am, there are no violations. That's impossible, she snapped. There has to be something. He repeated, slower. This is a legal, well-maintained farm. She pointed at Sergeant Peck, perched regally. What about that? It wakes me up every morning. The inspector blinked, then sighed. That's a rooster. Farms have roosters. Linda looked ready to combust. This is outrageous. You can't just let people do whatever they want out here like it's the Wild West. He gave her a weary look, wished me a good day, and left. Linda spun on me, hissing, You think this is funny? A little, I grinned. You haven't won, she spat. I'll take this higher. I'll change the laws. She stomped off, and I shrugged. Good luck. She wasn't bluffing. Next, she stormed the city council with a noise pollution complaint, claiming my rooster ruined the modern aesthetic of the area. She made such a scene they escorted her out. Then she launched an online petition to ban roosters. 3 signatures total, including hers and Rooster Killer 99. Meanwhile, my supporters countered with a Sergeant Peck, Rooster of Justice page, complete with memes. It was spiraling hilariously out of control. Then came the 4 a.m. police call. Red and blue lights flashed as 2 annoyed officers stood on my porch. Sir, one yawned. We got a farm animal noise complaint. I sighed. Let me guess, Linda? They didn't confirm, but I saw her smirking from her doorway. Is this a farm? I asked. Yes, one said. Do farms have roosters? Yes. Good night. Then, he muttered, and they left. Linda fumed, but she still had one last desperate move. Linda's final gambit was unhinged yet predictable. After failing with fake HOAs, county complaints, animal control, and police, she aimed high. Or so she thought. Around noon, I saw her march out in a stiff blazer, oversized sunglasses, and a stack of papers, slamming her car door like a thunderclap. I didn't know her target, but I braced myself. Hours later, a neighbor texted me a local news link. Linda had stormed the mayor's office, demanding a meeting. She'd brought a petition, for signatures strong, to ban roosters everywhere. She ranted about audio assault and backward farming, claiming victimhood. The mayor, bless him, listened patiently before explaining she'd moved to a farm town and suggesting she relocate if she hated it. Linda lost it, screaming, threatening lawsuits, until security dragged her out shrieking, "This isn't over." The next morning, silence woke me. No crow from Sergeant Peck. I bolted outside, his perch was empty. No feathers, no signs of a fight, but I knew Linda was behind it. Fury surging, I pounded on her door. She opened it, smiling sweetly. Good morning. Something wrong. I clenched my fists. Where's my rooster? She gasped, mock innocence dripping. Oh no, did it run off? Maybe it was tired of all that crowing. Linda, I growled, where is he? I don't know what you're talking about, she shrugged. I stepped back, forcing calm. Fine. I'll report a theft. Her smugness faltered. Theft? Yeah, I said, pulling out my phone. Stealing livestock from private property is a crime. The sheriff will love this. Maybe the news too. City woman steals farmer's rooster. Her face paled. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared each other down. Then, with a groan, she stomped inside. After some rustling and a muffled curse, she reappeared, thrusting a flapping, indignant Sergeant Peck at me. Take your stupid bird, she snapped. I caught him, and he settled in my arms, glaring at her. You really kidnapped my rooster, I said. It's not kidnapping. It's theft, Linda. I cut in. She muttered something and retreated. I carried Peck home, shaking my head at her lunacy. The next day, a for sale sign sprouted in her yard. I laughed. She'd finally caved. That night, neighbors gathered at my farm, swapping Linda stories. Someone suggested a goodbye Linda party with a rooster-topped cake. Peace returned, and Sergeant Peck crowed louder than ever, unchallenged. After Linda's surrender, I stepped outside with my coffee, savoring the quiet, not the tense kind, but true peace. Peck crowed triumphantly, and no one complained. Word spread fast. Linda was leaving, and the town rejoiced. Neighbors dropped by with food and drinks, hanging a Farewell Linda banner on my fence. We laughed over her antics, her finding Lisa for garden gnomes, her complaining about Robert's kids playing. She'd wanted a sanitized suburb, not the real countryside. Someone jokingly proposed making Sergeant Peck the town mascot. By morning, a giant poster of his face was on the general store's board. Respect the rooster or move back to the city. It went viral locally. T-shirts, stickers, the works. Peck became a legend, all thanks to Linda's stubbornness. Her house didn't sell easily, though. I watched potential buyers flinch at Peck's crows and leave, muttering about noise. Linda glared from her window. I waved cheerily. Weeks later, she approached me, defeated. I just want to sell and leave, she sighed. I need your help. Help with what? Keep the rooster quiet when buyers come. I stared, then shook my head. Nope. What do you mean, nope? She snapped. I'm not silencing my rooster to fix your mess, I said. You made this bed, Linda. Lie in it. She looked ready to argue, then deflated and walked away. A month later, she sold. The moving truck rolled out without a goodbye. We barbecued that night, the banner now featuring Peck in a crown. As the sun set, he crowed victoriously. The war was over, and the farm stood unchanged, exactly as it should be.